Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Can everyone hear me? I think so. We're going to start the second session right now. We are waiting one more panelist who will join us on the podium later, but I thought we could get started already. So good morning to everyone. My name is Suja Rishikesh Mavroidis, and I'm Director of WTO Market Access Division, and I have the pleasure of moderating the second session. I think we will continue with Eric's sweet candy theme and speak about the sweet candy in the digitalized ecosystem, so to speak. And I would note that this session has been structured slightly differently from the previous one. And so please do not let the 2 hours that we have for this session alarm you too much. But the first segment will be really presentations, talking about the TFA and digitalized trade in a more generic manner. And then we will hone in into the second segment, which is going to be more interactive with the panelists to discuss single windows and status of implementation. So before briefly introducing the panelists, I would like to take this opportunity to frankly thank them for agreeing to participate. I have to say, it is really time and effort out of your schedules, and we really do appreciate very much that you could be here with us at the WTO and online and provide us with your insight and expertise. So I will just be presenting the panelists briefly, and for additional information, please do not hesitate to look at the WTO events webpage, where there is a lot of information provided. So I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Zhang, who many of you already know. He's first secretary from the permanent mission of the People's Republic of China to the WTO. To my left is Mr. Tiago Martins Barbosa, who's the coordinator of the Brazil Single Windows Manager, and he's also coordinator of strategic projects at the Ministry of Economy of Brazil. To my right, we have Mr. Carlos Grau Tanner, Director General, Global Express Alliance. And then actually to my left, we will be welcoming Mr. Philip Horswell, who is Head of Single Trade Window Policy, Borders and Trade, Revenue and Customs from the United Kingdom. Now, online, we have a number of participants or panelists, and there is Ms. Özlem Soysanlia, who's the technical officer from the WCO, so welcome and thank you for being here. We have Mr. Yeboah, who's head of trade facilitation and import management from the Ministry of Trade and Industry from Ghana. We have also from Ghana, Mr. Raymond Amaglo, Director of Operation. We have Ms. Deborah Ponce, who again, many of you would know, who's Counselor, Permanent Mission of Guatemala to the World Trade Organization. We have Ms. Don Lee, who has very kindly agreed to step in instead of Mr. Ha, who was unable to be present. And Mr. Don Lee is Director General, E-Revenue Stamp Department, Korea Trade Network. So thank you once again, Mr. Lee, for stepping in last minute. We have Ms. Buket Asaf, Head of Department, Director General of Customs of Turkey. And then we have Mr. Zawani Sadawi, from Head of Sector for Electronic Customs, DG Taxation and Customs Union, European Commission. So thank you to all of you. And I think we will start immediately with the first presentation. So please, Mr. Lee. Oh, and I had a few other logistics. I'm sorry if we're not having one presentation, which does give more time to presenters. But as I was telling the panelists here, it's a trade-off. If we finish, we can leave for lunch earlier, or we can speak a bit more at the podium. So it's at their sweet will and pleasure. So so we have a bit more flexibility. So please go ahead, Mr. Lee.
Okay, thank you very much. Good day. I'm Don Lee from Korea Trade Network. I hope everybody could hear my voice very clearly. It's very great honor to introduce the National Digital Trade Platform of Korea in front of prestigious leaders and audience. I have only 8 minutes, so I will try to give the core contents of my presentation, and I'll skip most of the contents which I presented. And if you have any further inquiries or questions, you could send me an email to ask some details. Okay, my presentation will be composed of 4 contents. The first one is I will explain about the National Digital Trade Platform of Korea called U-Trade Hub. The second is benefits of U-Trade Hub. The third one is official development assistance efforts by Korean government to support the implementation of WTO TFA. And lastly, I will explain the lessons learned from our experience. Okay, next, please. Next, please. The Korean government has put great emphasis on trade promotion and facilitation, and international trade has been an engine of Korea's sustainable economic growth for decades. The comprehensive and diverse trade facilitation policies have also greatly helped in the realization of digital trade platform. The policies that had the greatest impact on the implementation of digital trade platform were the enactment of the Electronic Trade Facilitation Act and the establishment of the Electronic Trade Committee. As you see, the Korean trade volume increased very sharply since 1964. In 1964, it reached only $100 million, but 2021, the trade volume of Korea reached $1.26 trillion, and that is the number 8 in the world. Okay, next, please. In order to achieve trade facilitation, Korean government has established the National E-Trade Committee, and together with the private E-Trade Committee formed a joint Korean E-Trade Facilitation Center. The center has working groups to implement 33 tasks from the E-Trade Korea 2008 plan. Okay, and next, please. The deliverables of the E-Trade Facilitation Center was U-Trade Hub project. The project took 4 years, and $13 billion was invested to implement this digital trade platform. Next, please. If I briefly explain the Korean digital trade platform, U-Trade Hub. U-Trade Hub has 5 subsystems with different types of business. As you see, customs, logistics, banking settlement, and customs clearance and marketing functions are working in U-Trade Hub. Next, please. 11 years after the first U-Trade Hub project, the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy of Korea has decided the U-Trade Hub needs an upgrade to meet the new trends of technology and international trade. The increasing cross-border e-commerce and preferential trade transactions utilizing the latest technologies. The second project took 4 years and $8 million US dollars to implement. Okay, next, please. And the new U-Trade Hub 2.0 system will enhance the cross-border e-commerce system and trade portal, trade data portal, and FT free trade agreement origin management portal, and trade flow portal. And this new U-Trade Hub 2.0 system will be completed this coming November this year. Okay, next please. This shows the service and how the trade processes are covered by U-Trade Hub. If you have any further questions, you could send me email. We will skip this time. Okay, next please. And next slide shows the difference between U-Trade Hub and Unipass, the Korean e-customs system. There is a frequent question that we receive. What is the relationship between U-Trade Hub and Unipass, the Korean single window system? Well, the Unipass is a famous state-of-the-art custom single window system, and it covers the business scope of customs. But U-Trade Hub connects not only Unipass, but all other trade-related agencies and businesses, such as seaport, airports, banks, license and conformity certification agencies, countries, freight forwarders, and even e-marketplaces. So U-Trade Hub's service scope is much wider than Unipass, the Korean e-custom system, and U-Trade Hub covers all the scope of the business process. Next, please. This is from now on, I will explain the benefits of U-Trade Hub. As you see, a lot of users are using our U-Trade Hub, especially micro and small medium enterprises users are increased year by year. Okay, next please. U-Trade Hub also enhanced the supply chain financing for SMEs, and a lot of benefits we are providing for the traders and bankers as well. Okay, next please. And one of the outstanding features of U-Trade Hub is it accommodates cross-border e-commerce business. Well, the U-Trade Hub could provide a lot of benefits for e-commerce experts, and through the automated creation of documents for proof of foreign exchange transactions, simplified export declaration, and automated creation of purchase certificates. Okay, next please. And Korean government is presenting a lot of ODA projects with developing countries to support the implementation of WTO FTA, WTO TFA, and some of important ODA projects for the implementation through Korean government's ODA is cargo management and risk management system for Tanzanian Revenue Authority from 2011 to 2013, WCO Safe Framework and AI-based risk management system for Tajikistan Customs from 2018 to 2022, sorry, and realization of trade single window system for Algeria Customs, which is ongoing by Korea International Cooperation Agency. Okay, next please. Okay, and lastly, I want to tell you about the lessons learned. We want to share KTNet's lessons learned from the overseas project. The first one is a single window and a digital trade platform can play a key role in providing various trade-related value-added services for micro and small and medium enterprises. And second is A trade facilitation system should be designed based on international standards and guidelines. And it should reform the country's laws, regulations, and procedures. And lastly, a trade facilitation system requires continuous improvement of services for sustainable operation, maintenance, and upgrades. Technical assistance for capacity building for stakeholders in developing countries is crucial. Okay, thank you very much for your time. And if you have any further questions, please email me to donny@ktnet.co.kr or my colleague lamaku@ktnet.co.kr. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee, and sorry to have put so much pressure on you and you having to sort of race through those slides, which were very interesting, in fact. And I'm sure that people will take you up on that offer of responding to questions, perhaps even here, if you could just stay online. I think what I found also, I mean, interesting, many things interesting, but clearly the U-Trade Hub provides this sort of digital ecosystem. And it seems, of course, that MISMEs have benefited hugely from this. But one thing that struck me is that you're coming up with a version 2 at the end of the year. And I'm just wondering whether that would pose, you know, challenges for people to get used to perhaps a new kind of platform with new technology. I was just wondering what it means in terms of impact, and perhaps we will come back to that later. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Lee. And now I turn to Mr. Zhang. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. By taking this opportunity, China would like to share our experience on accelerated implementation of the TFA through smart customs, smart borders, and smart connectivities. China is one of the first WTO member to accept the WTO TFA in 2015. And since the TFA came into force in 2017, China has actively explored on how to integrate the intelligence technologies into the custom procedure, customer cooperation to accelerate the implementation of the TFA, especially the Article 1, 7, 8, 10, 12, and 13. And in the meantime, China also donated $1 million to the TFAF and launched many bilateral capacity building and technical assistance programs to support other developing members and LDCs to implement the agreement. Next slide, please. And the COVID-19 and also encouraged us to rethink the implementation of the TFA about how to digitalize trade, how to use contactless and paperless measures, and how to promote connectivity through smart approaches. Based on our efforts, China fully implemented TFA ahead of schedule in January 2020. And the 3S initiative is also in line with the themes of the WCO in the recent years. Next slide, please. And 2021, during the China Central and East Europe Summit, Chinese President Xi Jinping firstly proposed a major initiative to strengthen the customer cooperation on smart customs, smart borders, and smart connectivities. So far, the 3S initiative has been accepted in 21 strategic documents and intergovernmental cooperation documents by international organizations such as WCO and APEC. And China also developed 89 3S pilots in different ports. Next, please enjoy a video to further elaborate on this initiative. Thank you.
The core concept of the 3S initiative is SMART, which indicates not only the application of advanced technologies and equipment, but also innovative thinking, scientific methods, and modern administrative systems. Smart Customs features smart infrastructure, smart customs control, and smart internal management. Smart Borders encourages smart border control, cross-agency collaboration, and cross-border cooperation. Smart Connectivity envisions connection of customs information networks, alignment of customs governance models, and cooperation with supply chain stakeholders. In other words, Smart Customs aims to improve customs procedures. Smart Borders aims to connect agencies both along and across the borders. And Smart Connectivity aims to build a network among all stakeholders of the global supply chain. The three elements are like points, lines, and a plane on one hand, and are mutually enabling on the other, continuously creating endogenous driving force. China Customs has been firmly implementing the 3S initiative proposed by President Xi Jinping and has cultivated 78 3S pilot projects to both strengthen its own smart development and expand smart cooperation internationally. Here are some of the 3S pilot projects. Shenzhen Customs has piloted the application of 5G Smart Inspection, a device featuring a new intelligent supervision model for cross-border vehicles. With regard to software, 5G Smart Inspection enables efficient inspection via mobile devices according to preset procedures. Through a unified interface, Customs can carry out vehicle monitoring, real-time communication, and other operations. As for hardware, 5G Smart Inspection consists of a pair of smart glasses and a 5G tablet, which have access to the database of customs clearance, inspection, anti-smuggling, enterprise credit, etc., and can extract the data needed to assist officers in field operations. It also has other functions, such as feature recognition, license plate recognition, and automatic alarm, to enable the ports to conduct control operations in a more precise manner. Hohhot Customs Project is called Road Port Customs Control Operation Reform. Based on the pre-arrival risk analysis, this reform changes the declaration method from customs declaration on arrival to customs examination in advance, allowing multiple operations at ports to be conducted simultaneously. The Customs has built an intelligent inspection and release system, transforming customs clearance into a contactless and imperceptible process. As for inspection of goods, one-stop approach for customs inspection and release is adopted, with information such as channel number, RFID number, license number, weighbridge weight, and photos collected by the smart gauge shared among different agencies. Regarding passenger inspection, the Smart Channel now has the functions such as paperless health declaration, one code for customs clearance, infrared automatic temperature measurement, automatic gate inspection and release, etc. Customs Smart Inspection in Automated Terminal is a project by Shanghai Customs. Based on Yongsan Port Area Phase 4, the largest automated container terminal in the world. This project realizes unmanned, smart, and imperceptible customs inspection and clearance. The Yongsan Phase 4 automated terminal is equipped with automated guided vehicles, which, according to customs inspection instructions, automatically transport selected containers to the H986 equipment for non-intrusive inspection. The whole process is completely unmanned, and the scanned images are transmitted in real time by optical cable to Yongsan Customs Image Analysis Center that is 30 kilometers away for AI-based image reading. Shanghai Customs obtains data from the port operators, transportation companies, importers and exporters, and the customs itself, and has built the big data platform for cross-border trade to support smarter customs control and service. Chongqing Customs has launched a connectivity platform for data exchange and information sharing under the China-Singapore Digital Border Information Connectivity Project. Through this platform, logistics information of containers is exchanged in real time between the ports of Chongqing and Singapore. And the enterprises in both China and Singapore can keep track of the whole process of cargo logistics. Meanwhile, China and Singapore customs share information such as risks of infectious diseases at ports, animal and plant epidemic warnings, information on food with no access permission, quality and safety risks related to imports and exports, and IPR infringement cases at borders, etc., which helps the two sides carry out joint risk prevention and control, enhancing coordinated governance and cooperation and mutual trust between the two governments, and creating a better business environment for enterprises. The 3S initiative originated from China, but belongs to the world. China Customs is willing to work with other customs and all stakeholders, following the philosophy of building a community with a shared future for mankind. Seize opportunities in the new wave of technological revolution, respond to all challenges, and jointly improve customs governance in a modernized manner to make customs contribution to achieving common development and building a more dynamic, open, resilient, and sustainable global economy.
That was fascinating. I thought that we would be talking about the future, future of digital trade and TF, but it seems that the future is already with us right now. And question is how to get there. But thank you very much for that, Mr. Zhang. And just to inform participants that the video will be available on the website if you do want to see it again. So with that, we move straight to Mr. Tiago Barbosa. Please, Tiago, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Suja. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here at WTO to talk about the implementation of the trade facilitation and the single window in Brazil. I cannot see my presentation here. So that's it. Thank you again, Suja, and thank you, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here at WTO to talk about the implementation of the TFA and the single window in Brazil. My name is Tiago Barbosa. I am the Brazil single window manager. Next slide, please. Okay. So the single window in Brazil is called Portal Único Siscomex. Through the QR code you can see in the upside right, you can access the single window website that has all the information about the project, and it's also the website that we notified here in the WTO as they're implementing the Article 1 of the TFA. So next slide, please. And since the beginning of the project in Brazil, we decided that it was really important to establish a public and private partnership because the single window project is a too big and too important project to be developed exclusively by the government. So all the phases of the project, the private sector was involved and is still involved. You can see by the numbers here that more than 10,000 of different persons from the private sector are participating of the meetings of our single window project. More than 600 government participants doing the work in the single window project. So we do it all together, the process redesign, the revision of the legal framework, the decision to intensive of use of technologies, and the adoption of the international standards. So next slide, please. And now I'm gonna start to talk about the outcomes of the Brazil single window implementation. The main goal of the single window project in Brazil is time and cost reduction for the private sector. We focus on the private sector. So the National Industry Confederation published a study at the end of the last year comparing the time to clear an import and an export cargo. In 2014, that was the year that we launched the single window project in Brazil. We can see that we had 13 days to clear an export cargo and 17 days to clear an import cargo. And through those years, implementing the TFA and the single window project, we had a reduction of 8 days in each process, in the import cargo, in the export cargo. So now we are under the mean time of the OECD countries that we were 7 years, 8 years ago, really above. Can you, next slide, please? Yes. So detailing the time reduction in some type of goods that you can see here, we took 20 days to issue a drugs import license, and now we have 4 days. For the phytosanitary certification was 7 days, and now we have 24 hours, and 3 days to 15 minutes for sanitary certification. And this is a lot of trade facilitations measures and a lot of automations doing interoperating data between systems. Okay, so next slide, please. In the 2018 was the year that we fully deployed the single window, and we realized that we had a reduction of 70% of documents sent to the government to release an export good. And now all the documents that are sent through the single window has digital signatures. And also we have a reduction of 60% of the fields required in the export declaration document. And it seems that we have less information now, but no, we required less data, but we have more information and even better quality information, eliminate redundancies. The next slide, please. So the last outcome, but not least, is the cost reduction. Like Mr. William Gang just said in the previous session, we use the same index to calculate the savings in Brazil. Hummels, in the time as a trade barrier, he says that each day delayed in the cargo clearance represents 0.6 to 0.8% increase of the cost of the goods. So with the trade facilitation measures and the single window implementation, allowed the private sector to save $20 billion per year. And we have a return of investment of 1,000 to 1. Because in the single window project, it costed about $20 million to develop. So it's a really good investment to bring back results for the private sector. So next one, please. And in Brazil, we take the digital trade as a priority, and the single window use international standards. We are WCO data model compliant. We use intensively risk management with artificial intelligence for more than 10 years. We are now starting a project with blockchain to interoperate data with other countries, and beginning a project also with IoT for non-invasive inspection of goods at the ports. So because all of it, Brazil see the WTO JSI e-commerce as an important group of discussion of all this concept as digital trade facilitation, paperless trading, and e-commerce itself. Next slide. So that's it. Thank you all for your attention. I'm open to questions. And I am Thiago Barbosa, Brazil Single Window Manager. Obrigado.
Obrigado, Tiago. A very impressive presentation, and particularly congratulations to you personally, because you're a single windows manager. So really congratulations on those impressive results. There was one thing you said which struck me also, which is this sort of public-private partnership for the development of single windows, which I hadn't really heard about. So I found that interesting. I mean, we know about private sector participation in the context of NTFCs, but this idea of integrating them in the development and design of single windows was really something new for me. So thank you very much for that. So with that, we finished our presentations, and what we're hoping for is more of an interactive discussion. And we will start this discussion by asking, actually, if you wouldn't mind, Carlos, could I ask, yes, so I will start by asking perhaps, sorry, Helen has kept me, she is managing me and she's giving me notes here and I'm sort of going off the notes, so I apologize. So I think we will start with Carlos, actually, sorry. We'll start with Carlos, and Carlos, if you could give your reactions to the presentations first, and then perhaps also address this question that I have, which is, we saw that in the past 2 years, really how contactless procedures in e-commerce were widely deployed to deal with high-risk situations such as COVID-19. And what's your take on this? And would you have any specific recommendations to improve cross-border e-commerce?
Thank you, Sujan. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Gosh, that's almost 3 questions, isn't it? Let me address them in sequence. Reacting to the presentations, we've seen examples of very important efforts being deployed in the right direction, of digitizing trade facilitation and the borders. And we've seen very clear examples of the results that these efforts yield. I would have this or that comment for each of the countries, but I think that rather than doing it here, what this shows is the importance of what the next panel will be addressing, which is the critical role of the National Trade Facilitation Committee, where these things have to be discussed and hashed out, and where the private sector can and should be able to pinpoint at points that don't quite work yet, things that can be improved, and even with all these efforts that we've seen in these 3 countries, we would have comments about, improving this or that, how to digitalize this process further, or how to accelerate that, what data would be required for what process. And these discussions are critical. And as the gentleman from Korea said, there is room for constant improvement. And this improvement can only come from listening to the trading community, to the people who are in the border day in, day out, and experience these procedures. So that is the first take. The second question as to the pandemic and trade facilitation and our take on that, I would say that if you ever needed a litmus test or a proof of concept for the trade facilitation agreement, the pandemic was it. Why am I saying this? Because we operate in 220 countries and territories. And what we saw during the pandemic is very much what Dr. Burden from the pharmaceutical industry was referring to. April 2020, there's a huge spike in volumes on our networks, partly because people are resorting to e-commerce. They can't go to the shop around the corner in many places. And also the airline industry, the passenger airline industry is virtually grounded, and they carry a huge chunk of air cargo. So that cargo comes on our networks, comes on the networks of traditional pure air cargo operators. So while this is happening, we also see in April 2020 that facilitation suddenly is down, and it's down big time, and it's down across the board in many countries. Why? Because their procedures are manual, they're paper-based, they're traditional, and in some cases it was as simple as the customs officers could not go physically to their posting at the airport because there was a lockdown or public transport was not working. And if you have a paper-based procedure that requires original documents, original signatures, rubber stamps, whatnot, then obviously if you're not physically present, you cannot work from home in this kind of environment. Now, May, June, July 2020, while volumes are still growing double-digit in our networks, what happens is that we see facilitation suddenly improved. And why is that? Because many countries have to adopt procedures very quickly, almost overnight, to make sure that their borders are not clogged. They need to import things that are critical to fighting the pandemic. Their procedures are not allowing this. In fact, they are preventing it. So suddenly, in countries where you required paper documents, an email with a scanned copy is acceptable. Or they give you a smart camera and they agree to have remote inspections. And suddenly facilitation is up and improves. So the take for us is, again, this was the proof of concept for the TFA. The TFA is a toolbox that works. Countries that had procedures at the border that were better aligned with the standards in the trade facilitation agreement experienced fewer problems. Their supply chains were more resilient. So adopting these standards will make you more resilient for the next one, whatever it is and whenever it comes. So answer to the second question. Now, third question, e-commerce, very specific sector. As some speakers have mentioned, e-commerce is very peculiar in that it tends to generate lots of small parcels and lots of low value parcels. Now, Mrs. Roberta said that in some areas, some additional policies might be needed, and we think that's probably one of them. And we've looked at this, and an area in which additional measures might be needed is the way countries collect tax and duty on the low value shipments, the many, many, many low value shipments that e-commerce is generating. E-commerce boomed during the pandemic. We've seen countries where volumes of parcels under, say, $30 were up 8 times from one year to the next. How can you manage that? How can you collect a few dollars on each parcel if you don't have dedicated specific procedures for that? We have ideas. I would invite you to go to our website where we have a detailed proposal. Suffice it to say here that what this takes, in our humble opinion, would be to define special policies for a low value shipment band. You have to define that band, whatever it is. It's usually under a few $100s. These are not new policies. The World Customs Organization has recommendations in that respect. And then once you've defined that, you have to radically simplify the way you collect tax or duty or both on those shipments. Shipments above that threshold go through traditional procedures, but shipments under that threshold would benefit tremendously from having a very simplified procedure where duties and taxes are collected off the border. And we believe too that this can be automated to a great extent. Now, this would benefit micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises tremendously because many of our customers are micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, and they constantly complain about the complexity of tax and duty procedure at destination. So we think that this policy would bring tremendous benefits to MISMI exports. And incidentally, we also think that these policies need to be internationally coordinated. So it takes a forum such as the WTO to discuss these issues. And that's my take on question number 3. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Carlos, for your comprehensive answer. And I will now just turn immediately to Özlem, who's, I think, with us still. You are there. So Özlem, we look forward to your reactions to the presentations, but also a specific question to you is how do the technologies and digitalized trade included in the e-commerce framework of standards support trade facilitation? And I think that's being developed at the WCO. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Suja, for giving me the floor. Good day to everyone. It's a great pleasure for me being here today. Indeed, we listened to 3 previous presenters. They talked about the use of international standards and guidelines and importance of providing assistance and capacity building, and also importance of experience sharing. As we talk about risk analysis, single window and data exchange, this is indeed all about data. The implementation of a single window environment requires a common data language, and the use of non-standard country-specific data is highly inefficient in terms of cost and accuracy of both accuracy for both government and trade. Therefore, it is of course recommended that governments developing a single window environment should initiate the data harmonization process. In this regard, as referred by a few speakers previously, I would like to refer to the WCO data model, which was developed to provide a universal language for cross-border data exchange, enabling the implementation of single window systems. It is indeed mapped to the standards established by the international organizations such as UNCFAT, ISO, and also it is a combination of the work done by the WCO. Regarding the WCO e-commerce framework of standards, it was developed between 2016 and 2018, and it is based on 8 key principles and contains 15 baseline standards, with a focus on submission of advanced electronic data, simplified procedures for clearance and return, fair and efficient revenue collection, trust-based partnership with e-commerce stakeholders, and also use of advanced technologies. In the framework of standards, customs administrations are encouraged to apply dynamic risk management with advanced technologies, with a view to facilitating cross-border e-commerce flows. Using data analytics and screening methodologies as part of risk management is also encouraged for trade facilitation purposes. Furthermore, customs administrations are also encouraged to explore innovative technological developments and consider whether these developments can contribute to more effective and efficient control and facilitation of cross-border e-commerce. On the other hand, the use of single window for trade facilitation has also been strongly encouraged in e-commerce framework of standards. One of the areas highlighted in this regard is the exchange of advanced electronic data between e-commerce stakeholders and customs administrations through the single window for effective risk management and trade facilitation. And the second is cooperation among various national agencies through single window in order to provide coordinated response to safety and security risks stemming from cross-border e-commerce, thus facilitating legitimate trade. Indeed, we finalized the first periodic review of the e-commerce framework of standards and the tools supporting its implementation. And the results of this first periodic review have been approved by the WCO Council last week. During this process, a number of proposals highlighted the importance of ensuring that the advanced data to customs is of good quality. There were also some proposals highlighting the importance of interoperability of the technical solutions being deployed. As a result of this first periodic review, a new standard on data quality has been included in the e-commerce framework of standards, and reinforcing language has been inserted in the existing standards on risk management for facilitation and control, and also advanced technologies and innovation. Indeed, we are talking about digitalization, digital transformation, and data. Each year, the WCO chooses a theme that it deems relevant to the international customs community and its partners. And the theme for 2022 is scaling up customs digital transformation by embracing a data culture and building a data ecosystem. And digital transformation is indeed a catch-all term for describing the implementation of new technologies and processes to improve business operations and to facilitate trade. And in order to ensure consistency between the various data-related activities to adopt a harmonized and coordinated approach to data in the customs community, the WCO Council last week also adopted the WCO data strategy. And in the meantime, the Council agreed on the establishment of a working group on data and statistics. As I said in the beginning of my intervention, the use of international standards regarding the data and data exchange, and also adopting a progressive approach, such as data to collect and successfully exploit data to drive decisions making, and also to better and effective risk management are indeed important actions to achieve desired digital transformation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Özlem. Thank you very much for that. So now, finally, I open the floor for questions, and there will hopefully be an opportunity also at the end of the session, about 12:40, 12:35 or so, to ask further questions. But I do see, I think, Françoise on Zoom who would like to ask a question. So please go ahead, Françoise.
No, I'm sorry. Apologize. It's not a question. Just to thank the speakers for their very comprehensive and updated presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Françoise. Canada, please.
Thanks, Suja, and thanks to the presenters, Christopher O'Toole from Canada. Actually, I have a question for Thiago from Brazil. Really interesting. Two questions related to your very interesting presentation in terms of both the time savings in terms of the processing of data, as well as the reduction in documents required. So in relation to those two things, one, maybe if you could speak to sort of what caused, or what was sort of the biggest things that reduced the time from 2 weeks to 2 days, or whatever it was, or from 3 days to 2 hours. Like what in particular, if there's a couple of things you could highlight that really benefited or contributed to those what looked like really big reductions in terms of the processing time. The second thing around, you mentioned that you have reduced the amount of documents required for the processing, but you've got more information. So maybe if there's anything more you can kind of build on that in terms of what you saw and how that evolved. And then a last question, which wasn't exactly related to it, but you mentioned it in terms of the cost reductions for the private sector. And I believe Bill from the World Bank as well mentioned that. What about for the government? Because in my experience, at least in listening to a number of presentations in the committee, that there also is a lot of benefit to the government of these types of making these types of reforms in terms of the costs for them and the time involved in terms of processing the import. So just three there, if you could address it. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you for your questions. The first one about the main change that we did for the reduction. It was almost like all countries. We had a lot of database and a lot of data, but we lack information. We needed to integrate those data to have a really good information so we could do some previous analysis and do better risk management. And in Brazil, we did use risk management in customs from 10 years, but there was no culture of risk management in the government agencies. So when we brought them, all the 18 government agencies together in the project, together with the private sector and the customs, we could develop a risk management engine and integrating all the data, creating a data lake and exchange data between the different government agencies. So we have this kind of new information with less data required from the private sector. So that. The second one, sorry, was about?
I guess it was around the reductions in documents, which maybe you've kind of
I got the two together, yeah.
But the last one then is
the reduction
benefits
cost
for
and the government.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, we had more than just the reduction of cost in the government. We having a lot of retirement in the Brazilians, the servants. We have less people and more cargo get into and getting out. So the only one way to get through this all amount of new kind of process of import and export and the amount of cargo nowadays is relying on digital trade facilitation, single window, and intensive use of technology. And one thing that we learned a lot, use international standards. Because with no international standards, we cannot understand each other. It's only digitalizing bureaucracy. So we redesign the process, rethinking the process to create a process that is efficient and technology. Okay, thank you.
Tiago, I have one last question there, which is from Namibia.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And let me also join other previous speakers to thank the presenters as well as moderators of this session. My question goes to Brazil as well. It seems to have a greater interest because as Namibia, we are also in a process of establishing our national single window. I wanted to find out, because among the challenges when it comes to establishment of single window is the challenge of system interface. How did Brazil overcome this challenge to link together all the cross-border regulatory agencies through their system interface? Thank you.
So it's me again. Yes, welcome for your question. And what we did, the first thing that was really important in Brazil, we have a presidential decree that established the national single window project is the first thing. Then with this decree, we listed all the body agencies, the customs, the central bank and Brazil Central Bank. and also the national committees for trade facilitation and the local ones. Okay. And then when we started to think about the project, the brainstorming, we saw that the specialists are the private sector. They are who exchange goods between the borders, not us. So we came to them and said, why don't join us? We written a cooperation, private and public sector, and they did all the mapping, the as-is mapping of the process, identified the bottlenecks, and propose a to-be process. And then we, with this, the presidential decree, the involvement of the private sector, all the agencies started to get on board and help with the project. So we could also publish another decree saying about about a database that would be shared between all the body agencies. So this, in a legal document, it says in Brazil that all the data sent by the private sector to the single window is shared between all of them for each single responsibility for each body agency, but it's a shared database, so it helped a lot. And then when each body agency started to see some improvements for their work, they started help even more with the project, and then it's just a circle and going better and better, and that's it. But yes, we have a lot of challenge too. It's not only there's only good things. Okay.
Thanks very much, Tiago. Now I do see US. Christina, please.
Thank you, and thanks again to all the speakers for their time today and their work on this topic. As you were all talking, I can nodding because that's a very similar experience to what we had in the US. We found that prior to 2013, when we got a presidential decree that determined that there would be a single window project and who was mandated to participate. Prior to that, when the work was done by customs and our contractor, with the private sector being an afterthought, that was millions of dollars later and 7 catastrophic failures. So it wasn't until 2013 when there was a presidential decree that said you would work in tandem with the private sector and every agency would be involved that we successfully completed our single window and are constantly working on it. But that is a fundamental, constant conversation with the private sector. And I think that goes back to what Carlos was said and what Tiago was saying, is that this is not work that the government can take on itself. It is absolutely a partnership with the private sector. And I know we're going to have a session on NTFCs, but I think it bears mentioning at this time, as you talk about how to integrate all the different regulatory agencies. That's one piece, and the other piece, of course, is the private sector, and all three have to work together. So it's customs, the border agencies, and the private sector, because again, it's the private sector are the only ones that trade. They're the ones that have the systems that have to be compatible. They're the ones that are building, that are taking their data and supplying it. What I have always felt lacked in the WCO work in the framework of standards, which we are not proponents of because we didn't think that was a particularly good document, nor was the work that went into it particularly good. It was too early. There were a lot of pilots going on about how to deal with taxes, how to deal with goods, how to deal with small packages. and a lot of running around, but no clear direction or answers when that work was undertaken. And I think that the document that is still there that's being worked on reflects an rudimentary understanding of e-commerce. And doesn't really help us focus in this organization to how we are going to move forward. I think it needs to mature more. One of the things that we are seeing in the US, one of the things I'm experiencing is there are a lot of new automated solutions being offered by the private sector right now on invoices, paying taxes, paying goods, e-invoicing networks that are groundbreaking in what they are going to offer the next 10 years in the world of cross-border trade. None of that is being done at an international organization. It is all being done among the private sector. It is not being done at another organization. There's no organization you can go to that is nearly as forward-leaning and as innovative as the private sector is being right now. Where that leaves me in this full conversation here is, the US and Brazil have proposed in our committee that there should be a role for the private sector in the Trade Facilitation Committee. It was part of our 4-year review. It was a proposal we jointly put in. And it's not that we are trying to create a space in the official committee for the private sector to speak at, but we certainly think that there is a role for, on the margins of the TF committees, for the private sector to come in and talk about their experiences during COVID, the changes in automation, but how they are innovating, what are their emerging issues? We've heard earlier this morning about the cost of shipping. Well, the cost of shipping for those that do container loads versus those that do less than container loads, which is the vast majority of small shippers, is a very different experience and varies country to country. But this committee, our committee, would be enriched by those discussions to understand what are the emerging issues. How does trade facilitation offer a tool in this area? So I think I'm just using this opportunity to appeal to the different members in the room as we go over this summer to think about the proposal the US and Brazil put forward, to learn more on the ground, to really experience what traders experience, how automation is changing the game on a daily basis or will change it, what is coming down the pipe and how to prepare for it and be on the cutting edge of it. And I think that this conversation leads me here to start us to appeal again for more direct conversations with the private sector who can help us in these efforts as we're implementing TFA and move us away from 30,000 feet and really get us in conversations that will change the way the borders operate and how we as governments and traders experience it. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Christina. And of course, we have a number of proposals emanating from the review, which could be discussed in the TFC. So with that, we are really behind schedule, almost 20 minutes. And so we might have to change the script a little bit in terms of the second segment. We are into the second segment. And I want to thank the presenters and the panelists for the first segment. And really, it's been very, very interesting and very insightful. Please feel free to stay on because you can also make comments during the second segment if we have the time. Moving to the second segment, what we had thought is that everyone would do a sort of an elevator pitch in terms of where they stand on their single window. And I still would like to keep that on the table, but I would also like to ask a first question. And if people could be really succinct in their response, that would really help us get through the questions. Now, we are now honing in on single windows and single window implementation. And this discussion was to revolve around three topics. First of all, how do members implement a single window, and how to streamline the business to government data exchange, and the importance of interoperability and regional approaches. So these were the three sort of dimensions we wanted to look at in this segment. So what I would perhaps suggest in terms of the first question is whether the panelists would like to share with us in a bit more detail how you are implementing the national single window, which utilizes supply chain data effectively and eliminates a paper-based system. And perhaps I could ask, and this is the order that Helen has given me, so if anybody complaints, please complain to Helen. So I have Mr. Sadawi online, and perhaps I could ask you to start the discussion. And please, I would really appreciate it if we could keep our comments to 2 to 3 minutes, because as you see, the audience, they do have questions and comments to share with us and bring some additional insight to our discussion. Thank you very much.
Yes, good morning, everyone. This is Awani from European Commission. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, indeed, for the quick presentation on our activities from the European Union on single window, would like just to start by the name of the initiative. So we have chosen to name it EU Single Window Environment for Customs. And the terminology here points at the fact that customs will be playing a key role in its implementation, and at the same time we see it as an environment, so meaning that it is not a monolithic system or application to be put in place, but really a framework for cooperation between customs and partner competent authorities at the border. So from the EU, we are building on a pilot initiative that has been running for several years now. And this year is quite important because the legislative framework for the single window will enter into force. It is foreseen to enter into force in the fourth quarter of this year. And it will indeed build, as the previous speakers have mentioned, on two key components. The first one being on a regulatory single window, so to enhance cooperation between authorities at the border. And the second one, very much focused on trade facilitation as well, is a so-called business to government channel, where we want to, together with the member states and the European Commission, ensure the rollout of, at the level of each member state, single channels of communication so that the traders during the customs clearance can benefit from the channel, the single channel, to submit the information only once. Since it's meant to be very short, I would like to build on the interventions from previous speakers and indicate some of the design principles for the single window environment for customs at EU level. So the principles are about interoperability. So it's a regional single window. So that's the first specificity of it. It's relying very much on data harmonization. So from the EU, we adhere to international standards, notably the World Customs Organization data model. But beyond that, we are designing a system that will ensure data mapping between the different international standards, because the partner authorities, for example, in sanitary and phytosanitary area, are using other standards than the WCO1, for example, the UN CFACT standard. So in short, and in view of pressing time, I would like to say that the highlight for the EU is the entry into force of the regulation. Together with the seminar, I have shared a few slides which contain pointers, in particular to the text of the regulation and the design of the single window, the regional single window. And this indeed echoes what the previous speakers have mentioned. So the government to government aspect and the business to government aspect, aiming at bringing the customs union of the EU to a next modernization stage, in particular to align or to adhere to the objectives from the WTO TFA in respect of single window. That's it from my side. Ms. Chair, I hope I have given a high-level perspective. Happy to address any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sadawi, and I'm sure there will be questions thereafter, and I just want to give that opportunity to the audience. So we turn straight away to Mr. Yeboah and Mr. Amaglo online. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity given to Ghana to share our experience on the implementation of Ghana's single window. To start with, I'd want to indicate that Ghana has a long history of customs reforms and the issue of facilitating the movement of goods and services at our borders and trade facilitation, about 40 years of history. When you go through our history, you see that we've implemented a lot of reforms, starting from the import licensing regime, the pre-shipment regimes, automated systems of customs, that is ASICUDA, and we customs were in charge of valuation, declaration, and also classification of goods. Around the year 2015, we realized that we needed an automated system that brings together all these different platforms and operational bodies in order for us to get what we call an end-to-end seamless automated customs operations and management system, a single way. In doing so, what the government of Ghana did was to engage Ghana Link Network Services, which is a private company in Ghana, with its technical partners, that is Kupia from Korea. So we actually adopted and adapted the system in Ghana. As we have here in Ghana, it's called the Integrated Customs Management System. And the system is based on
Mr. Yeboah, we lost you just a few seconds ago. If you could just repeat the last 5 seconds, you were off screen. And we still don't hear you. You're muted, perhaps you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I indicated that after about 40 years of implementing different systems in the country, we saw that it is much more appropriate for us to have an end-to-end seamless automated customs operations management system. That is a single window. And that also flows out of the Article 10.4 of the Trade Facilitation Agreement. Ghana actually signed and ratified the TFA in 2017. So as part of our Category C measures, we were supposed to implement a single window. So we actually contracted, that is the government of Ghana contracted Ghana Link Network Services and its technical partners, that is Customs, Unipass International, Kupia Ghana, Kupia Korea, to deploy a single window that has various models. So the single window, as we speak, has been deployed, and it consists of various subsystems in Ghana. And these subsystems cover customs management, clearance management, investigation, audit, that is in terms of post-clearance audit, advanced passenger information system, customs data warehouse, and also we have the integrated risk management system. These systems were deployed in phases. The reason why we did that from the side of the government was to learn from the challenges that we may encounter as we deploy the system. So the first phase was deployed in March 2020 at various land borders. We started first with the land borders, that is the eastern, the western, also, and the northern land borders. The second phase was also deployed at the Takoradi Port, that is the second largest seaport in Ghana, and the Kotoka International Airport. The third phase, which was the last phase, was deployed in 1st June 2020, and that was deployed at the Tema Port, that is the largest port we have here in Ghana. In terms of institutional connectivity, the ICOMS is flexible and adaptable to other systems. So as we speak now, we have systems currently that are connected to the ICOMS. We have standalone systems at the port, at the Ghana Port and Harbors Authority had their own system that has been plugged into the ICOMS. The Meridian Port Services have been plugged in, the Ghana.gov platform, the non-intrusive scanning platforms are all linked to the ICOMS. So we have about 10 different stakeholder systems that are linked to the ICOMS. In terms of usage, we have more than 180 customs operational sites that are currently using the ICOMS. So we can say that virtually more than 99% of customs operational sites have been captured under the system. We also have internal users, more than 2,600 internal users, which are basically customs officers. And we have more than 7,000 external users that are other users apart from customs. MDAs, that is ministries, department, agencies who give licensing and certificate for importation and exportation at the port have also been hooked to the system. We have about 40 institutions that are currently operating with ICOMS. So these are some of the benefits of the single window. And we deployed this single window in June 2020 during the COVID era. But as I speak with you, these are some of the benefits that we have accrued or that we have experienced by deploying the single window. The release of time or time release at the port has reduced drastically and significantly, because prior to the implementation of the ICOMS, the minimum time or the average time was around 5 days. But as I speak with you, depending on the clearance usage or the plan that the person may choose, you can get it within 2 days. You can clear your goods within 2 days or even within hours. We have plans such as the pre-manifest declaration, and also we have the post-manifest declaration plans all on the platform. And this has significantly also reduced time and cost for clearance, because you don't have to wait too much at the port for demurrage and also port charges to increase. Taxes in Ghana prior to the ICOMS could be paid in only 2 commercial banks in Ghana. But as I speak with you, over 24 commercial banks have been hooked onto the ICOMS system. And now payments can be done through all these 24 commercial banks. Other payment models such as Visa, internet banking, and even mobile money systems can be used to pay for your goods and services. So you don't have to walk into a banking hall to pay for duties. Increased revenue. Data that we collected from the Ghana Revenue Authority indicate that although it was rolled out during the COVID era in 2020, in June 2020, revenue collected in July 2020 as compared to July 2019 increased by about 23%. And it has since that time, it increased month on month by 31%, 34%, 25%, 19% from August, September, October, November, and December 2020. So these are all indications that shows that the single window is actually beneficial, and Ghana has actually benefited from implementing the single window. And now we have an end-to-end system that is being managed by the Ghana Link Network Services and their technical partners. I think my time is up. Thank you very much for the opportunity given to Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yeboah. And Mr. Amaglo, I see that you're online, but perhaps, and I do recognize you because you have participated in the TFC before, so nice to see you again. But perhaps you could take the floor on another occasion on another question, if you don't mind. And we will move on to Miss, Deborah. Are you there, Deborah?
Yes, I'm here. Okay, I hope that you can hear me as well. Thank you very much, and I will take my elevator pitch first. So I just wanted to maybe give a perspective on the current implementation phase of the single window in Guatemala. So we are running a little bit behind. In fact, as many of the participants of the committee know, we have recently notified the extension of the implementation period for 1st of January 2024. So we have less than 2 years to finalize the procedure. The implementation of the single window was divided in three phases. So first, we started with a single portal for information on foreign trade, which was, we started the work on 2017 with the help of EU, where actually gave us the design and the structure of the platform, and also with the help of US that helped us with the collection of information and processes that we needed to insert there. So that is already done since January 2020, where it is being of use and can be accessed by anyone. Then the second phase was a single portal for foreign trade procedures. So actually the idea was to advance in the implementation of the single window, where members could actually, or users could actually initiate their procedures through the web page. And we hope that it will start being of use this month, so July 2022. And finally, the third stage, which is the most important one, was the full implementation of the single window, where all the procedures and even the payments online were available in this web page. And this hopefully, well, we hope that it is done by December 2023, so that we can comply with the implementation phase that has been extended. I'm happy to give more information maybe in the second question, but just to highlight that one of the main ideas for us to participate today was to highlight some of the difficulties that we are facing and the reasons why we were not able to finalize the single window. One of the main difficulties we found was that many ministries have to participate in the single window, and each ministry has their own portal, their own, let's say, procedures, and the interoperability of the information and of the portals per se is becoming a challenge. And that is one of the reasons why we were not, or still not, able to implement the totality of our single window. And then a second was really another difficulty that we found was also to keep the information updated. I think the colleague from Korea mentioned it. It's not one single implementation, but it's actually the updating of the information from all ministries and from all participants. So I think that those are two elements that we need to keep in mind, and I'm happy to come back in the next question. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Deborah. In fact, it brings back to mind something that we were facing at the WTO, where we had different databases scattered all through the organization, and now there is this sort of effort to try and bring it all under one umbrella and one portal. And I think we did introduce it to members, and they found it actually very helpful. So it's sort of introducing the same concept at the level of single windows, and making sure that all agencies can actually access the same information. So now we turn to Ms. Asaf. So please go ahead, Ms. Asaf.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to being a part of this event from Turkey. Let me start with the question, how do we implement a national single window in Turkey? The national single window system in Turkey enables traders to obtain the documents and licenses needed for customs procedures from a single point, and to execute and complete their customs procedures through a single point of application. With the single window system, it is aimed to facilitate the trade through the reduction of paperwork and to increase transparency and the effectiveness of inspections on import and export operations. So this results in increased efficiencies and the reduction in transaction costs. Regarding national single window system in Turkey, the document applications are submitted electronically through the single window system interface in the e-government gateway. The agencies and authorities that participate in importation, exportation, and transit procedures should be selected by the applicants in the system to evaluate the application, and the applications are accepted by the relevant agency for evaluation. After the examination by the participating authorities or agencies of the documentation or the data, the results are notified to the applicants through the single window electronically again, and 23 digits, a unique ID number is generated by the system. And this unit number, 23-digit e-document number, is declared in the relevant customs declaration. So there is no need to submit paper-based documents to the customs. The starting point of the implementation of single window in Turkey was the circular of Prime Ministry in 2012, and the first effective single window transaction was 2014. Currently, 170 documents issued by 22 government agencies are processed in electronic format in the single window system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Asaf. And finally, Mr. Horswell, I have to thank you very much for your patience, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Suja. I will try and keep these thoughts as quick as I can, so I don't impinge on lunch too much. I think I need to start by saying that the UK is essentially at the start of the delivery of our single trade window, and we're still working out the full design and the functionality of that window currently. In terms of implementation, we are expecting traders to see the benefits from 2023, when the first declarations that need to be made to the UK can be done via the single trade window, and full implementation will be achieved by 2027. So similar to some of the other speakers today, we're looking at a phased implementation of our single trade window. However, the UK has committed to developing a hopefully world-leading single trade window that is intended to create a single portal for all of our import, export and transit related regulatory requirements. And this will meet our agreements both to the TFA and to the G7. I also think it's helpful to mention that this is part of a wider program within the UK looking at digitization as the primary method to reduce friction on our borders. And that includes currently a raft of pilots to test new technologies, particularly aimed at supporting trusted traders so we can better focus our risking resources in the future. The introduction of a customs declaration service, which allows for the full digitization of all of our import tariffs, and also the modernization of both the common law in the UK and some of our long-standing statutes to ensure that trade documents in a digital form have the same effect as their paper counterparts, which isn't currently the case in all circumstances in the UK. So a real move to digitization. And all of this, of course, supports the implementation of the single trade window, which is one of the more important elements of our ambition. Just referencing some of the previous speakers and some of the previous conversations, we are also intending to work closely with the private sector. We're currently consulting them on a number of different things in relation to a single trade window. And we're also working with the National Trade Federation to consult on the development of our single trade window. I just think it would be helpful as well to mention a few elements of the planned functionalities of this window for members. So pre-populating declarations with existing data is something that we're very keen on doing. What this will entail is us using existing data that the UK holds on a particular trade or a particular party within the trade, and being able to provide that back to the trader. And the intention is that will improve accuracy for declarations and also reduce the level of burden on traders themselves as they're moving goods across the border. Similar to this point as well, we're hoping to allow multiple actors to be able to contribute to declarations where that is helpful. So if a number of different parties are involved in a trade, they will all be able to contribute data to that trade, and hopefully that will help ensure accuracy and ensure a speedier process across the border. And 2 points that I think we're going to speak about in further on within this discussion is the utilization of supply chain data and interoperability. So of course, the final thing to say is, as we're at the start of designing our single trade window, we are very, very happy to be part of this conversation and very, very happy to hear the views of other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. And in fact, I would like to do the second round of questions, but starting with you, perhaps, as you were so patient, I feel I should I should defer to you for the second question, which is really this this question of barriers to facilitating trade via business to government. And I think you had just mentioned it, this facilitating and streamlining of data exchange at the customs clearance. And if there are barriers that you've seen, how have you overcome them? And once Philip has answered, I leave the floor open to the panelists to also pick up if they so wish, and then we'll move to the third and final question, and then I will open up to the public. I hope that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you again. So, and again, I'll try and keep this answer relatively short, and hopefully if there's anything I don't pick up on, then we can pick it up in future questions. So I think the primary answer from a UK perspective to the challenge or overcoming the main barrier essentially to data exchange at the border is ensuring that all relevant parties can access the data they need when they need it. And being able to achieve this will result in significant reductions in delay and duplication at the border. Certainly in the UK, as I've alluded to previously, digitization is going to be key to overcoming that challenge. And I think there's two elements to this that are worth picking up now. The first is what we are doing currently in the UK in order to implement the single trade window, to start to delivering the single trade window. And the second is also the capabilities that we like to make sure that we can access in the future. So on the first point, to maximize the functionality of the single trade window, we are currently going through a process of completely understanding the data that we will be, that is used on the border. So we are working with traders in particular, but also our border authorities to understand who provides data, who needs it, who sends it, and when that data needs to be accessed. And this allows us to firstly ensure that the engine of the single trade window will be moving this information to where it needs to be in the most time efficient manner. But also, and I think this is important, that we can identify opportunities where existing duplication or additional burden might be happening, and then we can look to address that as part of the implementation of our single trade window, either through the software itself, the single trade window, or potentially in some cases re-engineering some of the existing custom processes so they better match up with a new digital border. And we're at the very, very early stages of that, but that's not something that we think ought to be ruled out. In terms of the data standards that we're looking at, and I think I'll just mention this quickly because it's been an important part of the conversation so far. We are essentially looking at an approach that harmonizes as much as possible internationally. And in particular, we are looking at WCO and UN CFAC standards. The second point that I mentioned was the future capabilities of a single trade window. So the UK is keen to ensure that its single trade window is able to use technology. And in particular, we're looking at supply chain data systems and machine learning to maximize the effective use of data at the border. Looking particularly at supply chain data, the ambition here, and I'm sorry if everyone is already familiar with this, but the ambition is to be able to link up with the existing supply chain platforms and to automatically access the data that sits there at the appropriate time. And going back to the question, obviously, if we're able to do that, that really addresses the fundamental problem of agencies being able to access the data they need at the time that they need to be able to do it. From the perspective of traders also, it should greatly reduce the administrative burden of making customs declarations, and it could potentially eliminate the need to submit declarations altogether for some traders. In terms of where we are, however, utilizing this technology at this point in time is perhaps easier said than done. We are looking at a number of things, still looking at what data is available up the supply chain from manufacturers, etc., and how risky we think it is for us to be able to use that data. how valuable the data is in terms of us being able to risk goods as they come across the border, what challenges there are likely to be in accessing that data. And in particular, I'm thinking here that many supply chains aren't necessarily using the same data at the moment, and whether we're able to overcome some of those challenges with our own technology. And finally, do we need to encourage the use of supply chain systems before we can properly utilize this technology within government? Essentially, how common is this technology within the private sector currently, and does that mean it's worthwhile for us to be investing in it in government? To answer those questions, we are currently using pilots. I alluded to some pilots at the beginning during the first time I spoke. An example of this is recently we tested how the process around import declarations for Australian wine imports can be made more efficient through a process called the RFIT, so reducing friction in international trade. And we used that proof of concept to demonstrate that our systems were able to integrate with the blockchain to access important declarations in a timely and less laborious way for traders. So that was a success. We're soon going to be establishing further pilots to better understand the feasibility of this technology again. And through those pilots, we're testing supply chain data systems through a range of different commodities and different trade routes. Hopefully at the end of that process, this is going to help us assess whether this technology can provide the highly assured data that we need and provide confidence that goods have not been tampered with, at the same time as reducing administrative burden. And obviously all three of those objectives are equally important at the border. So I think I'll stop there. That's set out sort of what the UK is doing and what it thinks the challenges are, but happy to answer any questions on that.
Thanks very much, Philip. That was, yeah, you've got big ambitions. I'd never thought of the single window integrated to the supply chains, and that would lend it an additional challenge, I would assume. But I see that the EU would like to come in. So please go ahead, Mr. Sadawi.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chair. So yes, in terms of challenges, I think that I would like to echo the remarks about the importance to associate the traders community. And in our pilot activities for single window, this has been our objective and to associate the trader community in the journey. Indeed, it's the single window we are building is first starting from the regulatory aspect, but it's of course not losing from sight that it's a trade facilitation instrument. In terms of challenges, I think from the EU, what we have seen is the number of legacy IT systems. And this is why we put very much the focus on the term environment, because it's really important to build something that takes into account the investments that have been made. And of course, from customs, we would like to drive the exercise. But nevertheless, the partner authorities at the border, the different agencies, they have also invested in significantly in IT systems. They also have relationship with their own clients. And that's the challenge is to embark all the authorities on the same journey to achieve the single channel of communication. So we think that with the regulation that we are landing this year, we have a good framework to do that. But certainly, associating traders and dealing with the legacy systems are two key, let's say, challenges, but I think also on the trader side, opportunities to address the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sadawi. Deborah from Guatemala, please.
Thank you. And just following up in some of the points that were mentioned regarding this legacy technology, I think that that's one of the challenges that we have found. So basically, each ministry and agency has their own, let's say, platform that they use for their internal procedures and also for the procedures for export and import of products. In particular, in our case, our customs agency has one of the most advanced platforms. And when it comes to a single window and unifying all of the procedures, the problem actually became that there is no, let's say, there is no harmonization on the different platforms, and it's becoming a little bit difficult to unify them so that all the procedures can be done online. So I think that that is one of the things that I would also like to highlight. In our sense, that would be, let's say, the technical challenge, and definitely the technology needs to be developed so that we can actually unify everything into one. And I think that the example of the data sources that we have in WTO is a good example. Imagine if that is the case and you have only one secretariat. Imagine when you have different ministries that are located not necessarily in the same places and inside of the country as well, in other departments. So I think that it is still a challenge. There's also a human challenge, let's say, and in our case, it's not that the ministries don't want to cooperate, but I think that you always need a framework, especially in the governmental side. And I think that I think Brazil and US mentioned the need for a law. Actually, in our case, in 2021, there was a law issued on the simplification of requirements and procedures of administration. And actually, that has been the basis for the advancements that we have achieved until now. So definitely the legal side of things is always very important. And finally, I also wanted to mention the issue of budget, because all of these, let's say, technological challenges and also human challenges comes with a price. And the budget at the moment, at least in the case of Guatemala, was very concentrated in fighting COVID-19 pandemic. And we are also having some challenges there in investing on this last part. So I think that those are some of the elements we wanted to highlight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deborah. I don't see anybody else wanting to take the floor on that question. So the third and final question I had was really focusing on the regional approaches and how to ensure maximum interoperability of national, regional, including a customs union, and bilateral, multilateral single window. We have touched upon this before, but if you could give additional insight and what additional benefits can be harnessed with greater levels of interoperability. So who would like to start on this question? I think Mr. Sadawi, you have your hand. Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Chair. So indeed, as briefly mentioned previously, from the EU, as you know, we are a customs union. So when we started the reflection on how to build single window, we looked a little bit in the different recommendations in the literature, in particular from the UNECE. And we noticed at the time that there was always a reference to the idea of national single window. So I think we tried to evolve a bit the recommendations, notably from the UNECE, the recommendation that defines single window to take into account the regional dimension, so of customs unions like ours. And in the progress and in the establishment of the EU single window, we have tried to find the balance between what could be done at central level from the European Commission and what could be done, ought to be done by the member states, so as to achieve a regional single window that is in line with the operational model. So from our perspective in the EU, so it's, as you know, one regulatory framework, one single market, one customs union, and then operations are handled by the member states of the EU. And the mechanisms we have are really maximizing those interactions. And in order to ensure that it works, the interoperability is based, of course, on data harmonization. So from the WCO data model, we have our own EU customs data model that is fully aligned to it, but that takes it to a further level, in particular, including all the data mappings towards the partner authorities at the border. So I think that's really a key instrument in order to ensure regional single window. Now, for the other parts of your question about the exchanges between single windows, so this is something that we do not foresee between the EU customs single window and third countries. This is not how we envisage it to work, but that's something that could be foreseen in the future. But for the time being, the focus is really on improving clearance at the border for the import, export, and transit procedures. I hope it clarifies a bit on your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sadawi. So I have Ghana online, and then perhaps after Ghana, if there are no more panelists wishing to take the floor, Philip would like to take the floor, and then we'll open up to the public. So thank you very much. So Ghana, please.
Thank you very much for the opportunity once more. At the regional level, Ghana is within the ECOWAS region. And the one biggest challenge that we have in this region is language, because we have Francophone countries and Anglophone countries. And as such, we use different custom systems and operation systems. Ghana is operating the integrated customs management system, and other member states within the region mostly are using Asikuda or Asikuda++. So at the ECOWAS region, what the ECOWAS Secretariat or the Commission is doing now is to start integrating at the regional level a transit regime. And the new regime that ECOWAS is working on now is what we call the ZIGMAT. That is the Interconnected Transit Goods Management System. That is being used to manage customs in order for us to see if transit goods are, let's say, coming from one country, it can easily move freely within the sub-region. This project is also being rolled out in phases, and the first phase is almost complete. We have the customs office phase, that is the desktop phase, and then the next phase will be the mobile app version, where customs in the sub-region can easily use their mobile phones to track transit goods. And then the next phase will be the national and regional security versions. So that is what is being done currently at the ECOWAS sub-regional level. What the ECOWAS Commission has also done is to establish what we call the regional trade facilitation committees, because under the TFA agreement, member states are supposed to set up national trade facilitation committees. And we've gone ahead a step further to establish what we call the regional trade facilitation committees, having all ECOWAS member states in that regional trade facilitation committee. And I'm happy to announce that I am the chair of that regional trade facilitation committee, where we meet at the regional level to discuss issues bordering on transit and seeing how best from state to state we can help customs to work together to ensure that goods and services freely moved across our borders. Also, with the AFCFTA Secretariat, we are now rolling out a new project, what we call the Abidjan-Lagos corridor. There is this long corridor of about 1,028 kilometers from the capital of Cote d'Ivoire, that is Abidjan, all the way through Ghana, Togo, Benin, to Nigeria, Lagos. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of roadblocks on this corridor. So what we are doing now is to see if we can deploy solutions to ensure that goods move freely on this corridor. And we are working with an East African private firm that actually deployed solutions in the East African region to facilitate trade. And that is what we are doing at the regional level. So we are hoping that we are going to chalk successes going forward to integrate at the regional level to have a form of a single window in the ECOWAS region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yebo. And I think this Regional Trade Facilitation Committee, we will be discussing it more in the next session. So thank you for that. And I was also struck by the languages question, but you never think of that, but it's true. Now, Philip, please go ahead.
Thank you again. I think for us, in addition to supply chain data, interoperability of the single trade window is probably one of the other major benefits that we're hoping to be able to gain from this. We've already discussed the importance of data harmonization, so I won't labor that point. The other point that I think what the other point that I wanted to make was about the importance of a paperless system and removing the legal barriers to creating that paperless trade environment in order to be able to better facilitate future interoperability. And in particular, I mentioned right at the very, very start our work to ensure that digital documents had the same status as paper documents in the UK. We're hoping a bill to that effect will come into effect in the UK in 2023. And I wanted in particular to mention it because I think it is probably perhaps a crucial international precedent with positive knock-on effects then across all sectors and industries, particularly those using UK law as a basis for their international contract law. That was everything from me. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Philip. Actually, I was reading somewhere that on average, a cross-border transaction requires the exchange of 36 documents and 240 copies. So yeah, if you're heading for a paperless environment, I think that would certainly be a trade facilitative measure to make it digital. So please, I will now open the floor to the public, and I have US. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and again, thanks to the panelists. So I have one observation, and which goes into a question for the panelists. As I've listened, and your most recent question had to do with regional single windows and the idea of interoperability has come up. Interoperability, of course, has been something that's been part of TFA since the agreement was finalized. The idea, the possibility of having interoperability. I think what in our experience, what we've seen over the last decade and most recently is it's a struggle to do interoperability of the systems with other WTO members and other trading partners, because for the government to exchange data with other governments, you know, in some of our legal systems, there's more impediments. How do you treat the data? Whose privacy laws count? What's the confidentiality? Who gets what data? It's very different than CMAAs, which have been in existence for years, about how to exchange data, because then in those situations, you're identifying particular transactions. But when you're talking about single window interoperability, you're talking about reams of data, millions of transactions being exchanged government to government, which brings with it quite a few questions. And I'd love to hear more about members' experiences, if there is anybody that's had experiences beyond sharing certificates of origin through ASEAN, where there has been successful I think China mentioned something that going on with Singapore, and they're sharing data. But we found that there are more impediments than not in this space. With that being said, as I was speaking about earlier, what we have seen though is the growth in other solutions. And one of the areas that our private sector is always looking for is less about interoperability and more about your export is my import, meaning that it's not the government to government sharing of data, the connectivity of a government to government, but that the messaging and the data sets are all compatible so that a trader can shoot the information to both parties at the same time. So it bypasses and deals with the issues and the restrictions on government to government sharing by putting the onus on those that own the information and voluntarily do that kind of sharing of information. So I would always be interested in the work that those on the panel are doing in this space. And second, again, I've got to come back to both for the EU and for the UK, and in this conversation, where are the tax authorities in these single windows? Because when you're talking about VAT payments, that's an integral part of all of these transactions. And I'm interested to understand how you have incorporated the tax authorities into your single windows, how, when you talk about interoperability, you're dealing with tax information and that aspect of the release and clearance of goods through the single windows. Thanks.
Christina. So Christina was addressing this to whoever on the panel would like to pick up on the answer. Would you? Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. And also thank to the comment from US. Yes, I think it's a very, very important topic that how we can exchange information among the different WTO members. And yes, as we already mentioned in the video, the China Chongqing Customs and already have jointly built a data exchange platform with Singapore called Smart Connectivity to realize the real-time interaction of dynamic information of containers logistics between China and China Chongqing port and the Singapore port. Now, all the stakeholders can timely track and query the logistic status of goods in both locations through the platform. We found that this is very, very good measure for the other stakeholders to effectively reduce the access barriers, especially for the small and the medium-sized enterprises to participate in the global trade chain. And in the meantime, and the China Customs also shared the real-time information, regulatory information since last year with Singapore, including the risk monitoring report, the warning notification of animal and plant epidemic, and the information on foods and cosmetics, the quality and the safety risk monitoring report of both sides. So, and also including the intellectual property infringement case. So I think it's, yes, we are facing the challenge, including the government structure, legislation, and many different issues. We need to, also challenge, I think, but because now the intelligence, intelligence and technology developed very fast, and also due to the pandemic, all of this remind us that we must adapt our own system to meet the challenge from the pandemic, from the intelligence development. So I think from China side, we already launched the reform and establishment of the governance system from the implementation of TFA. And also we set up the IT systems to be compatible with the new structure of the government. Of course, we also talked a lot about how to improve our legislation to get in line with the new challenges. And not only the government, but also I think it's a very good idea that we already, many speakers already mentioned that we should have very close cooperation with the business, the private sector. So we always will try to encourage the private sector to share their ideas and to participate in the whole process, how to improve our trade facilitation. And for example, also when we set up our systems, we not only the system of government, the border agencies, but also the system connected with the private sectors. For example, the logistics companies, then we can share information with them and to facilitate the trade. I mean, sometimes, for example, as the sample in the video, China could now we can finish the declaration process before they are arriving. How can we do it? Because we already shared the information with logistic companies before they are arriving. They already, for example, they already checked some things for the security of the port or something. If we have that kind of information to share before they are arrived to the customs, we already can do something to do the customs control before they are arriving. So there's a lot of different aspects that we can further discuss, but I think it's really a very good idea that we cooperate with the private sector and also try to see how we can cooperate with the different WTO members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zhang. Carlos, please. And if anyone can also pick up on the other question of tax authorities and their role. Is that what you're doing? Okay.
Thank you, Suja. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about, because taxation is increasingly an issue, particularly with regard to e-commerce, particularly with regard to low value shipments. And in many jurisdictions, it's almost the only issue because there are generous de minimis for duties, but not for taxes. Taxes are applied the same way they would be applied regardless of whether the vendor is a foreign vendor or a domestic vendor. So there's no discrimination. Here, I think there's two important ideas. One, simplification. It has to be done through a very simple registration procedure for the foreign vendor. And the second one is that this is not linked to clearance at the border. The tax authority gets the information necessary to find out how many items have been imported, what the value was, and then make sure that the tax is remitted periodically, every month or every quarter, like you would do domestically. If you go to a supermarket, you don't pay separate VAT for every item. You put through the counter, you pay as a whole, and then the supermarket every 3 months pays VAT to the government. Well, same here. You don't have to wait for clearance from the tax authority for a parcel that is taxed at $3.07. What happens is that this is done, the remittance is done and the clearance is done periodically, and the tax authority has the necessary data to make sure that this is being complied with. I think, for instance, Australia has a very interesting model in that respect, which works very, very well. And it's one certainly from which we draw a lot of inspiration.
Thank you, Carlos. Any other panelists would like to chip in? Philip? Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, just quickly. On the taxation point in particular, I think the UK perhaps is in a beneficial position in this regard because our customs authority and our tax authority are one and the same. I work for HM Revenue and Customs. Obviously, we're at a very early stage, so I can't set out exactly how this will all be factored in, but it's definitely central to our development. And in terms of the phasing of the introduction of our single trade window, the parts of the window that will be relevant to both the tax and customs authority will be first. So we do have an opportunity to really look at those, and they should be central to our development. Our single trade window will be providing traders essentially with an account where they're able to, that will act as a hub for a lot of different parts of their trade. And certainly there is potential there for us to be able to link that through to parts of taxation. But we're not yet at the stage where we're able to definitely say how we've been able to address that.
Thank you, Philip. I have Ghana online, followed by Oslam.
Thank you very much. On the issue of the tax authorities being incorporated into the system, I would like to share a bit of what pertains here in Ghana. In Ghana, just like the UK, we have our customs being part of the revenue, the Ghana Revenue Authority. And what we have done is that we have provided a data warehouse where the tax authorities are able to directly have access to all data regarding taxes that are being collected in the system. The advantage is that the Ghana Revenue Authority has introduced a platform, a payment platform, which is called the Ghana.gov platform. So all government taxes and duties are paid on this platform. And because this platform is connected to the ICOMS system, they have a real-time view of what duties and taxes are being collected. This platform, therefore, distributes the amounts collected periodically to the various agencies who are supposed to receive their payments as has been collected. So in Ghana, we have the situation where the tax authorities have a direct and real-time view of transactions. And for example, with a model like the authorized economic operators, where customers would have to sometimes look into the domestic tax transactions of an applicant because of this they have a view of the details of the applicant, performance or transactions for their customs duties and functions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amaglo. And I have Özlem, and then I have a question from the audience. So please go ahead, Özlem.
Thank you, Pooja, for giving me the floor. Indeed, I would like to highlight again the importance of experience sharing regarding the implementation of revenue collection approaches as well. As also Carlos mentioned, we have different implementations, different approaches by members. So in this regard, I would like to make a reference to the e-commerce compendium of case studies that we publish each year. And in this compendium of case studies, we shared experiences of implementation in terms of the e-commerce framework of standards as well as revenue collection approaches. And we published the third edition of this compendium after approval of the council last week. And in this compendium, members countries can see how the different revenue collection approaches have been implemented in different countries. And we also included a reference table on the different revenue collection models in this version of the compendium. I just wanted to highlight this and bring to the attention of countries who would like to see the best practices in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Özlem. So now I'll take, actually, Eric, it's going to be the last question because we're running up to or comment, as the case may be. So please, Eric.
Thank you very much. We're very, very short. Carlos mentioned the Australian system, which is a really good one. We have a similar one in Norway. It has 4 major points of that. First of all, it creates a level playing field between foreign and domestic sellers. Secondly, platforms with a certain amount of activity collects the VAT and pays to the Ministry of Finance every 4 months. Third, it has no effect on the customs control at the border. So health and other important issues are taken care of. And fourth, and probably the most important for many members, it ensures government revenue. It puts money in the bank. So that makes it easier, better, and safer to do e-commerce. Thank you.
And that's a very nice note to conclude on, I think. So I just wanted to, if no other panelists would like to take the floor, I would like to perhaps conclude this session. I would like to just mention, I'm not going to conclude everything, it's impossible, but just to say that trade facilitation is really close to my heart because I was in the building when the discussion started on trade facilitation in the Council for Trade in Goods. So this was many, many years ago. It didn't start in the negotiating group. And I was also present during the discussions leading to its conclusion before the Bali Ministerial in 2013. So, the TFA is a first-time agreement on many fronts, as pointed out by DDG Gonzalez in her opening remarks. And the TFA nudged, I think, everyone in a certain common direction and to be undertaken at their pace. what I did not see really was the TFA sort of mandating the use of any digital means or technologies, but there was certainly an encouragement. But I think what this first session showed us in particular is that we are perhaps talking about a digital trade facilitation at this stage. And of course, you know, the benefits have been elaborated and numerous, including efficiency gains, transparency, strengthening supply chains, providing resilience, and so on and so forth. So, and of course, when we talk about, you know, TFA, maybe version 2 or digital TF, I mean, we're talking contactless, paperless, automated, and so on and so forth, and robotic, etc. But honing in on the second segment, which was on single windows, you know, clearly many members are implementing single windows and they do see the benefits. I mean, you know, a trader having to visit 5 offices to either file papers or retrieve papers, obviously we see the issue of that, and just having a one-stop shop to file all these documents in electronic form. I mean, it's actually a no-brainer in my view, that it makes perfect sense. At the same time, I think what I also heard was there are elements to keep in mind when introducing single windows. And I think Deborah actually mentioned some of them very nicely, which include technical, human, and let's not forget the budgetary part of it, where we haven't had too much of a discussion on it and might come up at the last session, but there is a budget to this, and there's a need to keep the technology upgraded, and how that works in, again, I like using the term ecosystem because it captures the whole environment. So there are all these elements, and interoperability, which I must say I saw in a certain way, but the US kind of did nuance this aspect of it being more about sharing information from a trader's perspective than government to government sharing of data. So all of this, I think, gave us a lot. The session was really, really helpful in giving us all this information. I have done no justice in concluding it in any, or summarizing it in any way, but these were some of the thoughts that I took away from the session. So thank you very much for all your attention, and bon appétit. Merci beaucoup. And thanks to the panelists. Great job.